On this week's episode of Motivational Minutes, licensed therapist and social worker Kelly Bonner discusses historical inequity for Black women in the workplace and society. You talk about on your podcast, now you have two of them. You have your Burn Bright podcast and Black Girl Burnout. So the Black Girl Burnout podcast, I want to ask you, what is distinctly different about Black Girl Burnout versus just girl burnout?
Yes. So there is a distinct difference. And again, when you come to the table, I think for Black women, there's several things. One, there's a historical inequity based in the fact that you're a Black woman and you are coming to the table and, you know, your chair is like 3 inches shorter than everybody else's, and you got to go find like a booster seat to get you up. So there's that piece, right? And then there is the piece of the fact that as Black women, because of that social stigma, we're like the most entrepreneurial, educated. You meet a Black woman, she got 3 jobs, 2 side hustles, and like a degree she's working on at once, right? And it's very rare to meet Black women who aren't doing the most. And so a part of what I'm so passionate about and have been passionate about for years, working with women and particularly women of color, is that hustle culture mentality. Is like, how do we let that go? It's not saying that there's nothing wrong with being an overachiever or doing great works, that celebrate yourself and do those things, but understand what is driving me to be exhausted. Like, why am I in a perpetual state of movement and going? And then when you start to peel some of those layers back, you get to some of the roots of the pain of that, which is that hyper interdependence, because it's like, it's just me. I need to take care of myself. I need to take care of the people I love, because if not, who's going to lift up the community? Like, where were the community uppers, right? Like, there's so many roles that Black women have. And the more roles you have, the more likely you are to burn out. It doesn't matter what your gender is. It doesn't matter any of those. If you have 50 different roles, it doesn't matter who you are, you're going to burn out more likely. But Black women specifically have so many roles that are both formal and informal. They take on 50 million jobs, but then informally, they're the healer in their friend group. They're the community activist. They're the person who like brings everyone together for the holidays. Whatever that is, there's a lot of informal roles. And in those spaces is where I like to have people think about, why am I doing this? Where's time for joy in that list? I saw 50 million things. Where's my joy? Where is my peace? Where's this mentality of abundance? It's non-existent a lot of times because we're so busy doing.
That's such a great one, because in my own personal world, my mom is 73 and she's been a caregiver for her father and her sister. And my grandfather, who passed away in June, he was 93. My mom was his caregiver, and she continues to care for her younger sister who has MS. And my mom is, like I said, 73. And it's just been a constant, caregiving role for her. And eventually I said to her, Mom, there's a moment where you have to understand that life was not meant for you just to be a caregiver and then die. Like, you have to find some happiness in there for you. We got to get some happiness in there for you. So we're working on that now for Mom. But it's just, you nailed it exactly, where there's all these extra burdens as a woman of color on top of the regular adversity that a woman might face in general in the workplace or in society. And it's compiled, and it's really just almost ancestral and generational and systemic.
And it's ancestral myths, right? Like, really succinctly, what I tell people is like, and I talk about this a lot on the podcast, our birthright is not suffering. Who told us that was a lie. It's a systemic lie that keeps us trapped in doing these things. Our birthright is joy. When we go back and we look at the ancestors, we look at what happened in Africa, we look at what was happening there. It's joy, it's dance, it's vibrancy. That's our birthright. And so when I want people to shift to thinking about that, like, I'm not born to suffer. I'm not born to hold up the world. I'm not born to heal the world. That's not actually your birthright, although you can be a healer. Your birthright is joy, and figuring out what the path to that is. And that's ultimately what that podcast is about, is how to opt out of those things, those lies that we're telling ourselves and society's telling us, and opt into what is truly the birthright.
Subscribe today for more inspiration on the go.